Hey, what's going on YouTube? Marine X back at it again. Today we are tackling and taking a really important and hard look at a topic that I think is crazy important when it comes to your everyday carry. And it has to do with the concealed carry, whether it's a pistol, it's a rifle, whatever's legal in your state or your local jurisdiction, especially when it comes to young adult. Now, before we dive in, let's be clear. This isn't about questioning whether the right to bear arms is a thing. It is a thing. Second Amendment all the way from your boy. I'm talking about at what point should we let YNs CCW a weapon? And if you don't know what a YN means, I'm going to let you know. That means young nigga. I'm wondering at what point is it sufficient for a YN to be able to CCW, and why they may not be 100% responsible and ready at all times to make that important decision and hold that responsibility. It's about responsible gun ownership and understanding when the individuals are truly ready for the immense responsibility of carrying a concealed weapon. Specifically, we're going to talk about these YNs. There might be a good thing for there to be a little bit of a delay until they're a little bit older, focusing on a phenomenon called crashing out. YNs tend to crash out. Everybody can crash out. It doesn't matter if you are 10 years old or 80 years old, but the level of crash out you do in all those age ranges are different, and the tools that you have in between are different. And maybe it's not a complete barrier keeping them from doing it, but maybe it should be some extra hurdles in the way, kind of like car insurance or renting a vehicle. You ever notice when you try to rent a car and you're below 25, or you try to get car insurance, you're under 25 and you're a male, they make that shit harder, or they make it more expensive, almost cost prohibitive. I don't know. Maybe we should think about doing the same thing. So what exactly do we mean by crashing out? It's a term that describes situations where individuals react to stressful, confrontational, or emotionally charged circumstances with poor judgment, leading to the negative and often dangerous consequences. And here's why that particularly relevant to younger individuals in concealed carry, specifically YNs. The YN mentality doesn't have to be specifically geared towards young black boys, but it mostly is. But it's anyone who takes on that YN mentality, that group think, that the impulsivity, that just that mindset that is perceived to be the way that you're supposed to act. I don't know why nowadays we are starting to see kids in the 5th grade crash out for what they perceive to be disrespect. You're told to put your phone down and go sit down. Those are simple instructions. Back in the 90s when I was in elementary school, if I was told to sit down, I did it. It wasn't a sign of disrespect. Now we have kids that are in school, in elementary school, who are told to sit down and they're ready to nuck if they're buck. We got teachers being called fat, ugly, skinny, getting fought, getting chased with scissors, all sorts of stuff going on, whether it's because they listening to King Von before he died, listen to current rappers, Pop Smoke, drill rap, whatever. It is a mindset that is taking over the young folks nowadays, mainly because of social media, the easy access to it, and why crashing out is so easy to happen. Research in neuroscience constantly shows that the human brain, particularly the prefrontal cortex, that is the part responsible for decision making, impulse control, risk assessment, etc., doesn't develop until the mid-20s. As you may know, you're allowed to carry a long weapon, a long gun. Long gun is usually defined by a gun that's usually 16-inch barrel or longer. Usually when you're 18, you're allowed to own one and pursue one with a simple background check. You can have something that's a short barrel, similar to this 300 Blackout behind me that only has a 7-inch barrel, usually when you are 21. So 18 for the long rifle, 21 for pistols, and the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until your mid-20s, but you're able to own the firepower in your early 20s, maybe even still in your teens. I don't know if those always go together, not in 2025, where I can remember the responsible 18-year-old I was in 2004, or even those that preceded me in the 90s and 1980s. It's a whole different type of environment, mostly because of social media, that prefrontal cortex not being developed. This isn't some abstract idea. It has real world consequences. Let's think about it this way. Impulsivity. How impulsive someone is. Younger adults are more often and more prone for impulsive behaviors. In a high stress situation involving a firearm, an impulsive decision can have irreversible tragic outcomes. There is no rewind button when a gun is involved. Oftentimes that goes from brandishing, where you can all of a sudden now have a felony and not be able to carry that thing anymore, all the way to using it and someone being deleted because you don't have impulse control because of the prefrontal cortex not being fully developed. Maybe what's going on in your home environment. We'll talk about that here in a second. Emotional regulation, the inability for emotional regulation. It is heavy in young men and YNs. We don't see too many young girls running out, putting ski masks on, out here crashing out, versus we do with YNs and with young men. And we can see that difference all of the time. Emotional regulation skills are still maturing in young adults. Hell, they're even maturing in someone like me who's almost in his 40s. Intense emotions like anger and fear and frustration can easily overwhelm rational thoughts. With a firearm present, this can lead to serious misjudgment or a rapid escalation of conflict. I get in road rage stuff all the time where people can usually rev me up, but I have the emotional control to understand there's no need to go for the weapon that is at my 4 o'clock or at my 1 o'clock, because this can be de-escalated with words or just ignoring one another. If need be, maybe go fisticuffs, but to actually engage when it comes to the weapon itself, I have the impulse control to know I don't need to go there, especially if my life is not in danger. AYN, I don't know about that, especially if he's in a group of more than just himself. It's more than one YN. That type of control may not exist. Risk assessment is my third point when it comes to the brain housing group. The ability to accurately assess a threat and respond appropriately requires a nuanced understanding of when and how to use deadly force. That can be learned through life experience. That can be learned through having a father in the household. That can be learned through going through the military. That can be learned through a whole lot of training. A lot of YNs don't have any of the above, unfortunately, and they are trying to do risk assessment or RA on their own. They're jumping off the porch at 10 years old and they're starting to do risk assessment based on if someone has their hands in the pocket, if someone's walking weird, if someone's wearing the wrong color. It's just not the best way to do risk assessment. So let's link this back to crashing out. The brain's inability to do some of those things, emotional regulation, risk assessment, how impulsive you are. How does that lead back to crashing out? The real world scenarios is escalation of conflict. Young adults, YNs, are more likely to engage in arguments, altercations that quickly spiral out of control, whether it is you're getting jumped or you're getting shot. The presence of a firearm can transform a verbal dispute into a deadly encounter in milliseconds, not even seconds. People just making irrational decisions. The crash out happens. Sometimes they verbally say, I'm about to crash out. I don't give a F. When you're messing with a YN that says he's going to crash out, it's usually because he's surrounded by other YNs and he thinks he's impressing others. You ever seen a YN in the wild by himself? It's rare when you see him in the wild by themselves. It's rare when you see him in the wild by themselves crashing out. Crashing out usually involves being hyped up by others. Lack of de-escalation skills is another crash out thing that can happen. Effective de-escalation techniques are vital for avoiding violence. Younger individuals often have less experience in formal training and conflict resolution. This might be more relevant on perceived protection of a firearm rather than non-lethal solutions. How often will they get ready to just go in a fist fight? How often will they go with pepper gel? How often will somebody go with a tire thumper before they just go with the Glock 45, before they go with the Draco, before they go with the 300 Blackout? What is the implications of them not being able to do those de-escalation techniques, egress techniques? I've learned that throughout the years of how to calm a situation down, especially when it involves another man. How do you navigate that? Get myself home to my family. I can CCW in a smart way. In my late 30s, a YN may not be ready for that, even if he's legally allowed to do so. Peer influence, the one I keep talking about the most. I've been hinting at it. I've been skirting at it. Let's be honest. Let's be clear. YNs are easily subjected to peer pressure. The desire to assert dominance are powerful forces, especially in younger social circles. These can have influence on decision making, potentially leading to reckless actions or an inappropriate display of a firearm in social situations. Facebook, Okay, let's just keep it real. On my Facebook page, there are clearly pictures of me holding the AR-10, whatever. But is that me displaying my CCW weapon just for shits and giggles? Is that me doing it to boast and brag? No. There's a complete difference with that, especially with something that legally belongs to me, acquired by myself through the background check process and know when to use it, versus someone who is just going with the peer pressure techniques and they have no clue when and how to control themselves when it comes to peer pressure. Life experience and training is something else that I think is very important when it comes to thinking about CCW. YNs are ruining the society when it comes to all sorts of stuff. Now, when it comes to CCW, I don't want that affected either. Beyond brain development, life experience and extensive training are absolutely critical for responsible firearm ownership. Here in Texas, you don't have to have a CCW or a license to carry LTC to carry here in the States. If you're legally allowed to have that weapon, you are allowed to have access to that weapon, you can carry the weapon. But it is highly, highly recommended that you go through the training, because the training you learn when you should present to an officer that you're carrying. The area officer has a peace of mind when you hand them an LTC that you're a responsible citizen. You've been through some type of background check. It also tells you how to do basic, absolutely bacon, lettuce, and tomatoes safety precautions when it comes to a handgun when you go through that course. So that's the minimum. And going through that training, I think, is crazy important. The fact that some states, especially like mine, don't require you to do that can be influential. Mature judgment, navigating various social circles, that comes through life experiences. Me learning how to navigate social circles when we're mixing races, when we're mixing age, when we're mixing gender, when we're mixing just social classes where people make absorbently more money than I do or whatever. I've learned that throughout the years, where you don't necessarily know that when you're a young pup with the ability to now acquire your first weapon. Specialized training, you get that from basic firearm training. You may get that in the military, but you can also get that from just putting rounds down range, learning how to handle a weapon correctly. Responsible concealed carry demands advanced tactical training, advanced regular training. In my opinion, I think it requires that, but it doesn't actually require it. But I think that that's something that you should learn to do. De-escalation, legal considerations. When am I allowed to pull the weapon? When can't I pull the weapon? What states honor my carry rights? Understanding the gravity of the use of the weapon. You learn that through life experiences, whether it's your fists, some brass knuckles, or a weapon. You understand the gravity of an action you're about to take as you grow older. I understand that if I pickpocket Flight Simulator 1995, that it may be a misdemeanor. I didn't do that. One of my buddies did. But the point being is he got a misdemeanor and it went away once he became 18. I understand that if I smash the window in and take $10,000 worth of jewelry, I'm carrying a felony for the rest of my life. I understand if I use a weapon against someone, that has a tremendous consequence, whether positive or negative. And I understand that through life experiences. YNs may not possess that deep understanding and the gravity of having to grapple with these big decisions. The right to bear arms is fundamental. I believe it. I think it's important. Advocating for a higher age threshold is not something I want put into law. No, that's not what I want. That's not what this video is saying. What I'm saying is, for the social circles you run in, for those that you raise or whatever, I'm just advocating that we get as much training as possible so that as people transition to the ability to CCW, we have more responsible citizens carrying weapons and doing it responsibly. It is about measured, responsible approach that allows individuals to develop the necessary neurological maturity if they're older when they go about this, emotional regulation, life experience to exercise the right with the utmost responsibility. So prioritizing safety and sound judgment over immediate access for YNs to some weapons, I think, is important. But at the end of the day, if they have the right to do it, they have the right to do it. I do think that YNs don't have an identity. They don't know who they are. That is why they co-opt the term YN. That is why they follow rappers like King Von. And I like rap music myself. I like some of the shit that they be popping off, but I don't co-opt the mentality of being a YN. And you ever notice that if you get one of them as an individual, they don't go out crashing out on their own. They, in my opinion, a lot of them are just too much of a pussy to go out and to have that YN mentality by themselves. That's why they always roll in a pack. That's why they always feel like they need to impress one another. That's why they may not be ready for the responsibility of the CCW. But what are your thoughts on this? Comments down below. I would love to know, what do you think? Should it be forced? Should it be legislation? I don't think so. Should it be something that we just inherently develop into society, like insurance companies and car rental companies charge more or prohibit access to some of their vehicles and stuff until you reach a certain age? Is this something that needs to be solved through capitalism, through businesses, or solved through government or through social norms? I would love to know what your comments down below. If this is your first time stopping by, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you a part of the battalion. What are you carrying today? I got a Smith & Wesson 380 on me, just FYI. If this is not your first time stopping by, well, thank you once again for watching me run my great. For everyone else, we'll speak soon.